He was the face of one of the most beloved reality shows on Earth. The tough negotiator, the straight shooter, the history buff. Rick Harrison of Pawn Stars. But behind the fame, fortune, and fast deals was a man enduring quiet heartbreak, public legal battles, and unimaginable personal tragedy. Today on Classic Hollywood, we uncover what really happened to Rick Harrison. From rising TV stardom to devastating loss. And where he stands now. Richard Kevin Harrison was born on March 22, 1965, in the small city of Lexington, North Carolina. The third of 4 children to Richard Benjamin Harrison, a disciplined U.S. Navy veteran, and Joanne Rue Harrison, a determined and resilient woman who held the family together through thick and thin. But Rick's journey through life was far from smooth. From a very young age, life tested him in ways most children are spared. His family was struck by profound tragedy when his older sister Sherry, born with Down syndrome, passed away at just 6 years old. The pain of that loss left a quiet scar in the Harrison household, shaping Rick's early understanding of how fragile and precious life can be. When Rick was just 8, another challenge emerged, one that would stay with him for years. He began suffering from frequent epileptic seizures, a frightening and unpredictable condition that confined him to his bed for long stretches of time. While other kids his age were playing outside, Rick spent his days in solitude, often isolated but never idle. It was in those long, quiet hours that Rick discovered an escape, a passion, and a purpose. Books. He devoured everything he could get his hands on, especially drawn to history, physics, and classic literature. But one series in particular captivated him. The Great Brain by John D. Fitzgerald, a clever tale about a young boy in Utah who used his wit and charm to outsmart those around him. It was fiction, but for Rick it planted the seeds of ambition, strategy, and entrepreneurship. Though he struggled in the traditional school system, eventually dropping out during 10th grade, Rick was far from uneducated. His knowledge wasn't found in textbooks or classrooms. It was self-taught, earned through curiosity, resilience, and a sharp mind honed by hardship. The world would later see him as a savvy businessman and television icon, but few knew just how much adversity he had already overcome before he ever set foot in the... By the age of just 17, while most teenagers were still trying to figure out their future, Rick Harrison was facing the life-altering responsibilities of fatherhood. His then-girlfriend Kim became pregnant during their teenage years, a daunting situation for any young couple. Though their first child tragically passed away due to a miscarriage, Rick stood by Kim and the two married in 1982, determined to build a life together. In 1983, their son Corey was born, a child who would eventually grow up to be Rick's right hand in the family business. 2 years later, their second son, Adam, arrived. But despite the growing family, Rick's personal life was far from stable. The pressures of young parenthood, financial instability, and the constant pursuit of opportunity weighed heavily on him. By the time he was 23, Rick had already gone through a divorce and remarried, this time to Tracy, a woman who helped him raise both of his sons during those critical early years. While his personal life was a whirlwind of change, his professional ambitions were quietly beginning to take shape. In 1981, after the collapse of the family's real estate ventures, Rick and his father, Richard the Old Man Harrison, packed up and moved to Las Vegas, a city built on second chances. With barely enough money and nothing to lose, the father-son duo opened a modest 300-square-foot second-hand store on Las Vegas Boulevard. They named it the Gold and Silver Coin Shop, and at the time, it was just that: coins, collectibles, and the occasional odd item. But the seed had been planted. Through sheer hustle and knack for negotiation, and Rick's deep love of history and obscure trivia, the shop slowly began to evolve. Every item had a story, and Rick had the rare talent to tell it, weaving historical insight and charm into every transaction. What started as a survival move would, in time, transform into a cultural landmark and the beating heart of what the world would soon know as the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. The setting for one of television's most iconic reality series, Pawn Stars. In 2008, something extraordinary happened. Something Rick Harrison had dreamed of for years. When producers from Left Field Pictures stepped into the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop, They weren't just browsing for antiques or rare memorabilia. They were looking for stories. What they found wasn't just a shop filled with vintage treasures. They found characters, a family, and a goldmine of unscripted drama. At the heart of it all stood Rick, sharp-witted, charismatic, and endlessly knowledgeable. Alongside him was his no-nonsense father, Richard Harrison, better known to the world as the Old Man, whose dry humor and stern demeanor became a fan favorite. Add to that Rick's laid-back son Corey and the hilariously unpredictable childhood friend, Austin Chumley Russell, and the producers knew they had something special. The concept was simple yet powerful. Capture the real-life negotiations, oddball items, and family dynamics of a pawn shop in the heart of Las Vegas. But what unfolded was far beyond expectations. On July 19, 2009, Pawn Stars premiered on the History Channel, and almost overnight it became a cultural phenomenon. Audiences across America were hooked. They tuned in not just to see rare artifacts and clever haggling, but to watch the unique chemistry between the Harrisons and their team. The show was unlike anything else on TV, blending history, humor, human connection, and a touch of Las Vegas grit. It didn't take long for Pawn Stars to break records. By early 2011, it had become the #1 rated show on the History Channel, and was second only to Jersey Shore among all reality TV shows at the time. Viewers from around the world were drawn to the quirky cast, the unpredictable deals, and the surprising depth of knowledge Rick brought to every transaction. But behind the fame and ratings, it all began with one simple idea: that every item, no matter how dusty or old, has a story. And Rick Harrison knew just how to tell it. But while the cameras captured smiles, rare finds, and million-dollar deals, behind the scenes, Rick Harrison's life was beginning to quietly fall apart. In 2011, at the peak of Pawn Stars' success, Rick's personal life took a major hit. He filed for divorce from his second wife, Tracy, a woman who had helped raise his sons and supported him through the shop's early, lean years. The split marked the beginning of a period of emotional turbulence that Rick mostly kept hidden from the public eye. But the challenges didn't stop there. In June 2018, tragedy struck the Harrison family. Richard Harrison, known affectionately by fans as the Old Man, passed away at the age of 77 after a long battle with Parkinson's disease. He wasn't just Rick's father, and he was his business partner, his anchor, and the face of the show's dry humor and timeless wisdom. Losing him wasn't just a personal blow, it shook the foundation of everything Rick had built. The pain of that loss lingered, but Rick did what he always did. He kept moving forward. Then came another storm. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world, and it hit Las Vegas hard. Tourism came to a grinding halt. Crowds disappeared from the Strip, and the foot traffic that had once made the gold and silver pawn shop a bustling landmark vanished overnight. For a business that relied heavily on both tourism and local traffic, the impact was devastating. Rick's shop, which had once brought in over $1 million per year, saw its revenue crash to just $37,000. A staggering drop. Pawn shops, once seen as recession-proof, were suddenly struggling. People weren't shopping or pawning collectibles, they were just trying to survive. And for Rick, that meant partially closing his shop, operating through a small night window, and slashing interest rates just to help people hold on to what little they had. As the world shut down, Rick Harrison found himself juggling the grief of losing his father, the fallout of another failed marriage, and the fight to keep a beloved family business alive. All while still smiling for the cameras. Just when it seemed things couldn't get any worse, the unthinkable happened. Rick Harrison, the face of a show built on family, loyalty, and trust, found himself in a bitter legal battle not with a stranger or a rival, but with his own mother. In early 2022, Joanne Rue Harrison, now in her 80s and in declining health, filed a civil lawsuit in Nevada State Court. The allegations stunned fans and insiders alike. According to court documents, Joanne claimed that Rick had manipulated her into signing over her 51% ownership stake in the gold and silver pawn shop, at a time when she was recovering from a coma. She said she was confused, vulnerable, and not fully aware of what she was signing. But that was only the beginning. Joanne further accused Rick of withholding more than $500,000 in cash and silver, assets she believed were left to her by her late husband, Richard the Old Man Harrison. To make matters worse, she claimed that Rick had stopped sending her the regular $25,000 monthly payments she had once received from the shop's profits, leaving her financially strained and fearful for her future. The woman who had stood beside her husband for nearly 6 decades, helping build the foundation of the family business, now said she was being cut out by her own son. Her court filing painted a heartbreaking picture. A once trusted son now in full control of the family empire, while she struggled to cover the growing costs of her medical care, which had reportedly reached up to $155,000 per month. The lawsuit didn't just seek financial restitution. It asked the court to stop Rick from selling or moving any of the family's assets, and to return control over her share of the business through a constructive trust. A temporary restraining order was even filed, attempting to freeze assets and halt any financial activity that could affect Joanne's claims. Rick, for his part, denied everything. In a public statement, he said the accusations were completely untrue and claimed his mother was being influenced by others with personal agendas. "I believe people are manipulating her for their own benefit," he said. He also noted that one of the companies named in the lawsuit was fully owned by Joanne herself, making the case in his eyes even more confusing. The legal war shocked Pawn Stars fans. Many had admired Rick for his business acumen and close-knit family dynamic, but now they were forced to ask a difficult question. Could the man who had built his brand on integrity and family values have betrayed the very person who gave him life? But no hardship, no business struggle, no lawsuit could prepare Rick Harrison for what would become the darkest and most heartbreaking chapter of his life. In January 2024, Rick's world was shattered when his younger son, Adam Harrison, was found dead at the age of just 39. The cause? A lethal combination of fentanyl and methamphetamine, a silent, growing epidemic that continues to devastate families across America. It was a tragedy no parent should ever endure. According to the Clark County Medical Examiner, the overdose was ruled accidental. Rick, blindsided and grieving, took to Instagram in the only way he could, with a photo and a few painful words. "You'll always be in my heart. I love you, Adam." The caption was simple, but the weight of it was crushing. A broken heart emoji followed, a digital echo of a grief too deep to describe. The public response was immediate and heartfelt. Fans from around the world poured in with messages of sympathy. Even Donald Trump Jr. commented publicly, writing, "I'm so sorry, man," echoing what so many others felt. Sorrow, shock, and solidarity. Corey Harrison, Rick's eldest son and Pawn Stars co-star, also shared his own tribute. A deeply personal childhood photo of him and Adam. His caption read, "I'll always love you, Bubba." In that single image, 2 smiling brothers became a symbol of innocence lost and memories frozen in time. Though Adam was never featured on Pawn Stars, he had once worked at the gold and silver pawn shop. He later chose a quieter path, becoming a plumber and living a life away from the cameras. But that didn't make Rick any less proud. Over the years, Rick spoke about both his sons with love and admiration. One in the spotlight, the other in the shadows, but both equally close to his heart. For Rick, this loss was more than personal. It was a painful reminder of a crisis sweeping the country. In a statement following Adam's passing, Rick made it clear, "The fentanyl crisis in this country needs to be addressed more seriously." It wasn't just grief he expressed, it was a call to action. A father mourning his son, using his platform to speak truth in the wake of tragedy. And while Rick has always been known for his strength, his sharp wit, and his steady presence on television, this moment revealed something else. The depth of a father's love, and the fragility of even the strongest lives when loss knocks at the door. Today, Rick Harrison, once the fast-talking dealmaker at the heart of the gold and silver pawn shop, has taken a well-earned step back. No longer working the counter day in and day out, Rick is now semi-retired, but make no mistake, he's far from finished. These days, he continues to appear in Pawn Stars Do America, the show's high-energy spin-off that takes the team on the road across the U.S., searching for hidden treasures and sharing stories with fans from coast to coast. The same wit, the same love of history, and the same negotiating skills are still there. But now, they come with the perspective of a man who's seen both the peaks of fame and the depths of personal pain. Off-camera, Rick is embracing something he never had much time for in the past: family. He's now a grandfather, spending his quieter days surrounded by the next generation of Harrisons. Whether it's off-roading with his stepdaughters or sharing father-daughter moments on Instagram, Rick seems to be savoring the simpler joys of life. But the fire inside him hasn't gone out. In recent years, Rick has hinted at stepping into the world of politics, first endorsing candidates, then considering his own run for office. In fact, at one point, he publicly admitted he was contemplating a campaign for U.S. Senate. "A lot of people have talked to me about it," he said. "I haven't made up my mind, but I'm keeping my options open." And who could blame him? After all, Rick Harrison has endured more than most: 3 divorces, the death of his beloved father, a pandemic that crippled his business, a public lawsuit from his own mother, and the unimaginable grief of losing a son. Yet through it all, he remains, smiling, steady, and still standing. The man who made a living telling the history behind forgotten objects has now become part of history himself. His journey, marked by pain, persistence, and perseverance, reminds us that real strength isn't in what you own. It's in what you overcome. In the end, Rick Harrison's life is more than a TV show. It's more than antiques, deals, or dollar signs. It's proof that behind every pawn ticket, there's a human story. And Rick's? It's one the world won't soon forget. If you were moved by Rick's journey, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell for more deep dives into the untold stories behind the stars. Only on Classic Hollywood. Until next time, keep watching and keep remembering.